Hello everybody, this is Albert with Green Tea House. I hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to talk about the subtleties and intricacies of steeping time. Now before we begin, I appreciate if you check out our back catalog of episodes, in particular the Fundamentals of Tea playlist, which is what is green tea, what is white tea, and so forth. And we do have an episode on how to steep your teas. Now I mentioned in that episode that there's no hard rule of thumb on how long you should steep your teas. I think the best way to look at steepage time is kind of make it akin to a gasoline tank. In that, the longer you drive, the less that's in the tank. And it's the same thing with steeping your tea. The longer you steep your tea, the less efficacy there's going to be left in the tea leaves afterwards. And inversely, the more efficacy that's going to be in those tea leaves that you steep for a long time. So for example, my rule of thumb is 3 minutes 3 times. That's what I would consider to be a session. So if I use that analogy with driving, it's I've driven a third of my tank, and then I pour hot water, wait 3 minutes, drink that cup. I've wasted another third of the tank. I only have a third left, and then I steep more water, put it in 3 minutes, drink it, and then my gas tank is gone. That's how I like to do it. I like to pace it out. I like to reuse my tea leaves. We've talked about in previous episodes that there's no problem with reusing your tea leaves. This is one of the beauties of actually using loose leaf tea as opposed to tea bags, because most tea bags you can't really re-steep because it's low quality tea, or it's just the fannings or sawdust of tea, and they're not really equipped for re-steeping, whereas tea leaves certainly are. In this video, you can certainly apply it to tisanes, herbals, and botanicals and all these things like that. Now, that's how I do it. If you're looking for like a strong drink, then steep 6 minutes. But understand, if you steep 6 minutes, then you've pretty much sucked out all the potency of the tea leaves. And what you're gonna have is like you've driven 250 miles on that tank, and now you got a quarter of a tank, if that, maybe an eighth of the tank, and you could re-steep it one time more. And then pretty much the tea leaves have been sucked out of their potential. Or conversely, if you want to have more cups of water, like I like to stay hydrated in the morning, you could do even shorter steepage times. In particular, the Japanese green teas, 1 minute steepage. Like if you're doing gyokuro or sencha, 1 minute steepage. Steep 1 minute, boom, drink it. And then if you've done 1 minute, you could actually, you can go to some cultivars in Japan, they'll tell you re-steep 30 seconds, re-steep 45, really short. You can do that. So you have the option, if you want lighter cups of whatever you're drinking, black tea, oolong, green tea, you can steep for a minute. And then as you're steeping for a minute, then therefore the potency that is in that glass is going to be less, but there's going to be more potency of the tea remaining in the tea leaves. Therefore, you can have more cups with the same amount of tea leaves. So it's really a question of what you're looking for. I would say this, if money is not an object, then I would tell you, steep for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, because when you drink that tea, especially if it's like a black tea or a pu'er, it's going to be strong. It's going to be strong. And then drink that cup, throw out those tea leaves, and then put in another ounce of tea, teaspoon of tea, and then do long steepages. If money is more of an issue, or if you don't like robust drinks, robust teas, then maybe do a shorter steepage time of like 1 minute to 2 minutes. There's no hard rule of thumb on how you steep their tea. I would tell you there's more of a hard rule of thumb on the temperature that you use for steeping your tea and your tisanes. But when it comes to steepage time, it's really based on what you prefer and what you're wanting to get out of the tea leaves. And so using the gasoline thing, like if you're going for a short ride down the street, just 1 minute steep, 1 minute steep, 1 minute steep, 1 minute steep, 1 minute, you can re-steep those leaves like 8 times if you want to. But if you want something stronger, steep it longer. The other factor that you can look at steepage times too is increase the amount of leaves that you use. You could do that too. The rule of thumb is typically you're going to do 1 ounce of tea. Now understand that even that 1 ounce is different. Like if you look at the way chamomile lavender is designed, 1 ounce of that is not really a lot, because the blossoms of chamomile lavender are pretty big. But if you kind of maybe compare it to something like rhubarb, which is mostly like grainy, 1 teaspoon is a lot more than you would get on the teas that are very big in themselves. But you could put 2 or 3 scoops of your tea if you want to make a more potent or if you want to play around with the steepage time. That is completely up to you. I would tell you the best thing to do when you get our teas is play around with the steepage time. We put on the back of the labels just an average recommendation, which is about 3 minutes of steepage for whatever you're drinking. If you go and Google, how long should I steep masala chai, chai tea, or how long should I steep genmaicha, or how long should I steep jasmine pearl, or just green pearl, green jasmine, you're going to get different answers from different websites. Some will say 2 minutes, some will say 4 minutes. Really, it's up to you. So I would tell you, with us, our recommendation is you start at 3 minutes and then go from there. But just longer. The longer you steep it, the less potency you're going to have, and the remaining leaves for you to re-steep. But the stronger the drink's going to be, the longer you steep it, just obviously. So just kind of play around and look at what your intent is. For me, it's not necessarily the potency of the drink, though I like the good flavor of it. For me, it's hydration and drinking the tea, so I like to do little steepages. The other thing is, the other factor you have to look at is volume. For example, my wife, what she'll do is maybe do 1 teaspoon of whatever tea, but then fill it up in a kettle. It's like this big. So when you're doing that, then you got to think about steepage time, because if you're only steeping that and the volume's increased to a kettle, not a kiyusu. A kiyusu is like essentially a cup. But if you're putting it like in a big kettle, then you really got to think of steepage time. So steepage time there really should be increased to compensate for the volume of water that you're using. You could, of course, increase the volume of water and still do a short steepage, and then you could reuse those leaves if you really want to get hydrated, because you're doing like 3 or 4 of these kettles. But I really wouldn't recommend that, because I think it takes away from the potency of the tea and the taste of the tea. So what I would do is, like, if you're doing a full kettle, then I would double the amount of leaves and then steep it very long, 5-6 minutes. Again, it's completely up to you. Play around with it. Guys, post in the comments. I'd like to hear with you what's your average steepage rate on your teas and tisanes. Until next time, take care. God bless.